Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Today's breaking news is that inside of the Kursk region of the Russian Federation, Ukrainian armed forces, or Free Russian armed forces largely supported and backed by Ukraine, have rapidly advanced across the border just east of Sumy and are beginning to move on to a larger border town called the town of Sudzha. We have been able to get a large amount of video and picture evidence confirming that the Free Russian Army is moving in very rapidly. We have also been able to see that a large amount of supporting fire has been given to the Free Russian Army, and not only that, we are hearing reports that massive casualties and losses are being taken by Russian defensive forces within the area around the town of Sudzha. According to the information that we have, the Free Russian Army forces began to move across the border just a few mere hours ago. We were able to see that a large amount of strikers, around 7 U.S.-provided Stryker armored personnel carriers, were provided to the Free Russian Army in this one clip for them to be able to transit across the border. The Stryker APC was provided specifically by the United States of America to Ukraine, and in the past we have seen that the U.S. government has officially denounced the use of U.S. weaponry by the Free Russian Army on Russian soil. However, it seems that once again the Free Russian Army has been equipped and is using Stryker armored personnel carriers to be able to move across the border rapidly and try and protect their infantry as best as possible from any sort of retaliatory attack by Russian forces. From what we understand, these forces had just moved across the border when that film was being made, but it is showing a larger involvement of U.S. forces, U.S. supplied equipment and materials. Another interesting thing is that the Sudzha garrison apparently had some heads-up notice that there was going to be some sort of a border incursion in this area and had started to prepare for some sort of an offensive to be made. Once the Free Russian Army began to advance rapidly across the border, we saw that immediately Russian forces were being captured in somewhat larger numbers and were immediately surrendering to the Ukrainian armed forces. In this clip here, we can see some of the Free Russian Army forces beginning to bring the Russian prisoners back across the border for them to be processed into a Ukrainian-ran prisoner of war camp. And we see them walking down the street right here. And in the next picture, we can see one of the Russian prisoners as well as another. And then in our last picture, we can once again see 3 more Russians that have laid down on the ground with their hands above their heads, surrendering to the Ukrainian armed forces. It is showing either that the garrison's morale is incredibly low, or that this advance was so rapid, even with pre-prepared defensive positions that the Russians had made in this area, they were rapidly overwhelmed and decided to surrender, considering the overwhelming of their forces, and also most likely the isolation of multiple different pockets of Russian armed forces along the border area. At the exact same time, we also got to see that there was some very heavy shelling around the area just west of Sudzha. We were able to see large plumes of smoke rising practically from the fields leading all the way up to the town. And really quickly to geolocate this for everyone, from what we can tell, this picture came from the area just west of Sudzha, in between the border crossing here and the actual town of Sudzha here. We can actually see some of the valley right here that goes from Gogolevka to Rubanshina right there, and we can also see that smoke is rising from those villages and also concentrated areas near to the western side of Sudzha, right over here. This is all showing us that a heavy amount of artillery support is being provided to the Free Russian Army as they're advancing across the border. We believe that they may have made it already into the town of Sudzha, or really the Sudzha metropolitan area, if you want to call it that. It's an incredibly small town, but it is made up of 3 different villages. But nevertheless, they have rapidly advanced. They are being provided with a large amount of support in terms of artillery fire, and also, from what we can understand, anti-air fire as well, which we very rarely ever seen integrated into the Free Russian Army in any large form. But we have already gotten reports and proof that a Ka-52 has been shot down, and there are rumors of a possible second Ka-52 that has also been shot down within the Kursk region. This is a major development, as Russian helicopters of these kinds, Ka-52s and Mi-28s, which are incredibly expensive and very rare for the modern-day Russian Federation, being shot down in any numbers at this point in the war is very rare. Russian attack helicopters are heavily insulated from attacks these days, rarely ever used in the occupied areas of Ukraine, and very rarely used within the Russian Federation itself. The loss of 2 Ka-52s is showing that the Ukrainian forces, or the Free Russian Army forces on the ground, are advancing so rapidly that their information may have been outdated, and they flew into a very dangerous area of the front lines where they were targeted and destroyed by manpads based on the ground, or maybe even other forms of anti-aircraft fire. We have also been able to see a little bit of additional information from Noel reports saying that more and more Russian channels are claiming, and not providing any video evidence until right now, that a border incursion near the Gogolevka, Sudzha, and near Kurilovka is currently happening in the Kursk region. We can also see some images of the units that were crossing. It appears that their identification symbol is some sort of a hollow triangle that they put onto both of these Humvees here, and once again showing us a little bit more of the equipment and abilities that the Free Russian Army is currently in possession of. Not only do they have Stryker armored personnel carriers, but they also have Humvee utility vehicles as well. This is showing us that this force is a little bit better equipped than last time, and considering that we now understand that they have a decent amount of anti-air, and not only anti-air but artillery assets that are supporting them during this mission, we can assume that this unit may be close to a brigade size, or at least a battalion size, with the battalion being comprised of multiple different companies. It may be a very it may be a very thick battalion. I think that's the best way I can put it, as this battalion can be made up of an incredibly large number of companies, each one providing a specific job or a specific part of this unit's potent firepower. We could see that a basic kind of a structure for this battalion may be that it has a headquarters unit, and then it has 2 mechanized infantry companies. It may also have 2 motorized infantry companies. Then it may also have 1 artillery unit, maybe some sort of a 122 millimeter mortar, or maybe some sort of a self-propelled gun of a 122 millimeter or 152 millimeter variety. And in a very rare instance, these may just be heavy mortars of the 120 millimeter variety. We may even also find out in the future that they are actually supported by Western 155 millimeter artillery pieces, although that's a little unlikely in my opinion. We can also understand that they most likely have some sort of support or a sustainment unit that has been built into this battalion, if it's a battalion-sized element, and they most likely also have some sort of an anti-air company as well, considering that their anti-aircraft fire so far appears to be very accurate, very potent, and has destroyed a large number of the air assets that are currently involved in the Russian defensive operation within this region. All of this is giving us a very clear picture that this time, while the Free Russian Army is probably not going to be achieving any longer-lasting goals like the liberation of an entire area along the Russian border, which has not happened up until this point, they are planning on inflicting as much damage onto Russian border forces as possible, and also trying to draw a larger element of the Russian army into this area near Kursk. This may be suggesting that the Ukrainian armed forces have a larger plan or an offensive action within the area around Avdiivka and Bakhmut, and they're trying to draw some Russian reserve forces away from those areas where they could be used as a surge force to defend against a Ukrainian counterattack, and draw them up into the area around Sudzha instead, incredibly far away from the ongoing Ukrainian counterattack if this is their plan, and also making sure that that counterattack will have a lot more breathing room, at least for the Ukrainian commanders, to make decisions and conduct more aggressive actions. This may also be another attempt by the Free Russian Army to try and recruit members into their ranks, but so far we've seen that those recruiting efforts have largely been unsuccessful in prior attempts, and they may just be trying to conduct a border raid more so to try and draw away Russian forces from the occupied areas of Ukraine. That is another thing that we'd also like to make clear as well. While this is clearly an invasion of the Russian Federation by the Free Russian Army, we are expecting that there's going to be no larger repercussions or implications of lost territory beyond the area around Sudzha. In previous times, such as the Belgrade incursions earlier this year, we expected that the Free Russian Army's advances in the axes of Shebekino and Grivoron were going to advance rapidly in attempted encirclement of Belgrade, which would be a large embarrassment for the Russian Federation's armed forces, and not only that, it would have ensured that the Free Russian Army would have controlled a large amount of land and would have been able to recruit heavily from the local population. We did not see that happen, which was much to our dismay, and so we are assuming that once again this will be the same within this area of the border. They will most likely occupy the area for several weeks and then withdraw after meeting significant Russian resistance. That is what we are expecting at this moment. So I want to make sure that we put that out there, because some people are going to be saying, oh, they're going to liberate the Russian Federation. We don't think they will be, and we don't think they really have a plan or an objective of doing so, but this will certainly be a major disruption for the Russian Federation, without a doubt. And interestingly enough, at the exact same time, we have heard that the Russian Ministry of Defense has had another purging, as 3 more top officials have been arrested within the Russian Ministry of Defense on corruption charges this week. Corruption charges are generally the be-all, catch-all in the Russian Federation for taking care of anyone that has now fallen out of favor of the Russian Federation's government. We are assuming that these 3 senior officials have most likely fallen out of favor with Putin's government and are most likely going to be facing the wrath of being incompetent or corrupt in a way that the Russian Federation's government is not happy with. This may also be directly involved to the Belgorod border incursion, or more so the Kursk border incursion, and it may be that these 3 officials have provided the Ukrainians with information to help the Free Russian Army to advance a lot easier around the area of Sudzha, and now they're going to be purged from the Russian Federation's governmental apparatus. Meanwhile, moving on down into the area of the Middle East, we have been able to hear that a rocket and drone attack has occurred at the Al-Asad airbase, and apparently several U.S. service members have been injured. According to our reports, 5 U.S. service members and 2 civilian contractors have been injured, totaling 7 U.S. military personnel at the Al-Asad airbase. We were apparently told that they were injured in an Iranian-backed forces attack conducted by rockets the other day, and apparently most of them were able to be treated at the base because they had minor injuries. 2 of them had to be airlifted for further medical treatment, and the location that they've been airlifted to has not been stated publicly. However, it is once again showing that Iranian-backed proxies are attacking the United States of America and its forces within the region, and this is once again posing a great risk and a security threat for U.S. forces that are currently stationed in the Middle East, and not only that, it is once again a slap in the face for the United States of America and our sovereignty and also our interest within the region. Many have been asking that the United States takes far more aggressive action against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its proxies, and of course, this channel being pro-Western, we would have to agree that such a strong stance against the Islamic Republic of Iran would be necessary. We've also been able to get information that, according to Tehran, new Notams have been issued. According to them, there will be gunfire within those areas over the next few days or maybe hours, and we have been able to get that apparently these Notams were issued over Iraqi towns. For example, one of the coordinates here is actually over Al-Fallujah. Many people may remember Al-Fallujah because during 2006 and 2007, major battles raged within the town of Al-Fallujah as radical insurgents had taken over the town, and the United States Marine Corps was sent in to clear out the city. From what we understand, one of the Notams has been issued over this area, and we are going to be waiting to see what this results in. Whether this be Iranian proxies firing their missiles from inside of Iraq, or some sort of a larger plan by the Iraqis to try and draw out U.S. and coalition forces into responding so that way the Iranians can exhaust them of ammunition and supplies before a major attack is to occur. Nevertheless, we are still waiting for this major attack in the Middle East. The Iranians are still not backing down, neither are the Israelis, and it does appear that a large, full-blown conflict will be happening within the area. And we will, of course, be covering that when it happens live. But of course, I got to thank you all so much once again for watching the breaking news that we have so far. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We put out short war summaries like these every single day that we can whenever there's breaking news. And we also put out live streams every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. We would also like to thank everyone who is supporting us on Patreon, because you folks help these video projects to be possible. If it wasn't for the folks over on Patreon who were supporting this channel, we wouldn't be able to dedicate the time and effort to be able to make this our full-time job and to be able to cover the news like we have been for quite some time. And so if you do enjoy this channel and would like to see these video projects continue and hopefully get a little bit better on in the future as we are hoping in the background, please make sure to click on the link down in the description below to go over to our Patreon and support the channel there if you would like. But still, a huge shout out to all of our patrons, a big thank you to everyone who has watched so far, and I will see you all in the next one.